All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited about this panel. I'm going to start this with a quick story just because I think that it's relevant since we are in the Indeed offices. When we talk about leadership, a lot of that goes back to experiences, different opportunities in your lives, jobs, mistakes, failing forward, which I love. And actually, one of my stops in my career was I worked in recruitment advertisement, and I worked with Indeed for 2 years. So I did a lot of business with them for my clients. And so when I had this opportunity to moderate this panel, I actually saw this same panel with different panelists, of course, in South by. And I was in the crowd, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. The energy, the stories. I would love the opportunity to do this one day. So when I got the email, I'm like, heck yeah, I'm doing it. So all of that to say, my name is Yadia Suarez. I'm with IZEA, a social influencing company, and I am so honored to share the stage with these amazing women. I had the opportunity to have an hour-long conversation, which thank you for taking the time of your busy day to give me that time to learn a little bit about their experiences, how they got to where they are today. And so the goal of this conversation today is that I want them to highlight some of the learnings and experience and insights that they've learned throughout their career. But we're in a safe space here, so we're going to start the conversation with women in leadership. But the way that we're going to be able to impact and incite change is if we do it together. This is not only a female initiative, it is a collective initiative. So it is our goal to just shine a little bit of light of how these amazing women have gotten to where they are today. But also hopefully you walk out with a little insight, excitement, and continue the conversations in your workplace. So with that, I will let our amazing panelists introduce themselves. Jessica, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Jessica Blumenthal, and I head up brand and innovation for Avaline, which is a wine brand co-founded by two amazing women, Cameron Diaz and her friend, serial entrepreneur Catherine Power. So I came onto the brand at its foundation, have been a part of the crazy journey of 4 years at a startup, and a lot of lessons learned along the way.
I think I know Cameron Diaz. I'm familiar with her. I think I know who she is. I'm Megan Renzer. I'm in global marketing at Dell Technologies here in Austin, Texas. And we did commit to a quota mentioning the Barbie movie a certain amount of times. So please hold us accountable to those mentions. It wouldn't be a woman's panel without, Barbie. You're the Barbie.
True. My name is Rajaa Grar. Good morning, everyone. I'm a venture partner with Springdale Ventures, a woman co-founded VC firm here in Austin that invests in early stage companies. And prior to this, I was a CMO and Chief Digital Officer at Nutrabolt, C4 Energy, and also in other CPG and beauty and wellness brands. Super happy to be with you and with these amazing ladies.
Thank you. So we'll start off with someone in this group shared this in the channel when we were talking. Today there are 41 women leading S&P 500 companies, which is a new record. Amazing. But obviously there's still a lot of work to be done. So as we continue to see more females in leadership positions, I want to know what each one of you thinks are key qualities and attributes that makes a good leader. Jessica, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that one of the unique things that women bring to leadership is this understanding that there are so many forces pulling you in life, and as we kind of navigate this new world of work-life balance that I know both men and women and anyone out there are trying to figure out, I feel like women are uniquely positioned to empathize with some of those challenges and help navigate into this future space.
The word voice has come up in our prep call, and it's been something I've been reflecting on, that duality of voice. Just getting feedback right now. But one, having the confidence as a woman to use your voice in a meeting. I know, especially early in my career, I found it challenging to speak up in meetings or to always assume that the person who spoke the most knew the most. So that's been something that I've developed as I've grown in seniority across the years of
finding the courage and the confidence and trusting the value in myself and my contributions to use my voice. And on the other side of that, as you become more and more of a leader, it's having the confidence to amplify other voices in the room and not feeling like you have to be the one to say it, but really letting your team shine, taking a back seat, and knowing how to elevate the other viewpoints from everybody as a collective in the room.
Yeah, I agree with all of these traits. I think also another trait, whether it's men or female leaders, it's being results oriented and very much metrics oriented. And I think as a brand marketer, a career brand marketer, first in CPG and afterwards in high growth health and wellness companies, as a CMO, it's a very vulnerable job. And I always knew that as a woman and a woman in leadership, I had to also own my narrative and control my destiny, right? And it doesn't get better than having the right metrics and being extremely maniacal about what are the achievements and the accomplishments and be able to quantify that. And even more important for women and women of color that are in leadership position, that stat that you said, that same stat for women of color that hold CEO jobs in Fortune 500 companies is 1.2%. So the the odds are stacked against women and women of color in leadership position, and that's such an important trait that I always developed and try to also stress with my teams to develop, especially women in marketing positions.
And I love that you guys were talking about measurement, because our clients are always asking, what's a benchmark? What's a benchmark? And it's the same thing for growth in your career, right? And leadership. It's like, if it doesn't get measured, how are you going to improve? Rajaa, this question is for you. If you could define women's empowerment and equality and what the difference of both are.
I would say women and equality and women empowerment, really, I would love to see one day that, that stat of 8% and 1.2% becomes 50%, right? And I hope it's this, I think I'm a dreamer, and, being in brand marketing, you envision and you super creative, and I dream of that day. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think why not, right? How can we also have access and showcase our leadership, our empathetic qualities, leading some of the best brands, biggest companies in this world, and you can do it as well, if not better. I think that's what I'd like to see. But I think women equality is such a difficult concept, and having witnessed very early on as a child, as an immigrant, leaving Morocco, North Africa, my country of origin, to go to Canada, and having gone through a lot of discrimination and also just a lot of doubt, of showcasing my worth and being able to stay resilient in order to reach my goals and my dreams. And I just saw that equality is a very tough concept to really fully see realized in this world. And it takes it step by step. And for women, it's never going to get there if, not everyone is equal, right? LGBTQ, trans, people of color, everyone. And it's a fight that we all need to be united in, and it's so key. So I think that is just something that I feel I always think about. And as I was able to find my voice, find positions that I was able to influence better and have more impact, is how do you pay it forward, and how do you stress that importance for everyone around you? And I think I'm very, very positive and enthused to see this new generation that is much more aware of the lack of equality in all areas of life. And that's very exciting, because we're all working to make it better.
Hello? Okay. I love that. And I think in order to be able to improve and see those numbers increase, it starts here with these conversations, not shying away, and also helping our young leaders find their voice. So with that, Jessica, I would love to hear about a particular mentor or an experience in your life that you can recall that really helped position you for growth in your career, whether it was a person or a meeting you had, just some sort of experience that helped you find your voice and feel like you were ready to kind of continue growing in the corporate ladder.
Definitely. I started my career in this world of trend forecasting, which is kind of crazy. I was a 22-year-old, and my job was to tell Fortune 500 executives, what they didn't understand about millennials and Gen Z. And so with that role, I was quite empowered. We were a company of maybe 10 people, and my first boss, Jane Buckingham, she had really started her career when she was in her teens and built this platform for herself. And in getting to work for her, she would stick me on the front of a stage in front of, very important people and really empower me to advise them. And I think that foundational experience really led me to be who I am and led me to never question if I should have a say. And so this panel has actually been really enlightening to me and just the privilege of that experience. And now as I mentor women, it's really fun to give them that same platform and those same opportunities.
Essentially, you just have to jump right in.
Yeah, but you need that person who's giving you the opportunity to jump in. And I'm sure she was doing a lot of the legwork to establish her credibility among those male leaders who were in, their 40s and 50s. And as a young woman, I just never really had to think about it. It was actually not until recently, within the last 2 years, working in the very male-dominated adult beverage industry, that I really faced gender discrimination and, learned how to deal with that more proactively.
Would you say that experience helped you navigate when you're trying to help younger talent now?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I think, just being a woman who has always worked with women who invest in me. I mean, it's not just Jane. It was also a mentor of mine, Sally Miller, Catherine Power, one of the co-founders. They've always given me these platforms, and it's something that I definitely bring to my team as well.
What a gift.
Definitely. Very, very grateful for all that experience.
And Megan, this question's for you. Has there been any barriers or challenges as you've gone through your experiences in your career? I know you've had different positions across the board that you would like to share.
Yeah, how much time do you have?
Look at that.
The agenda is shifting.
I picked the right person.
That's right. I almost cringe recalling some of these stories and events, but again, the transparency is, I think, what we're here in this safe space to share and learn from. Throughout my career, I've noticed some of the historical gender norms surface. For example, I'll be leading a meeting in a boardroom, and somehow the default is, Megan, can you take notes? And I would like to think it's because of my impeccable note-taking skills. But time and time again, where it's, can you order lunch? Make sure we're, a good lunch. So having, again, the confidence and the courage to be compliant and be a good sport, but also proactively delegate that to other team members who maybe aren't women. Knowing and learning that it's not personal. I think there's this very long historical gender norm that's kind of the traditional role, right, of women taking notes and falling into that. And again, that sounds very dated, but it is a reality. It's a reality I've faced at very progressive companies, at Google, at Meta, at very, again, forward companies. And it's something that I continue to proactively address with kindness and love and education, but also with assertiveness.
And this sounds so silly to bring up, but as a fashionable woman, I'm sure that you've experienced some questionable interactions in a meeting room for sure. Yes, it's one of my favorite stories to tell, so thank you. Again, cringeworthy, but it wasn't until I found the confidence to fully bring my whole self to work, where I felt like I was really in my groove and could really make an impact in an organization.
Back in the day when we were going to the office every day, I had a particularly bright color of lipstick on. Sounds like a silly story, but it is one that continues to stick with me, and I share it as an educational moment. And a gentleman felt comfortable enough to come up to me and share his feedback that he didn't think my lipstick color was appropriate for the workplace. Deep breath. And it was like in that moment I felt like there was a devil and an angel on my shoulder. Like, do I just punch him and run away? Or do I take a deep breath and count to 10 and figure out kind of how to address this? And it was a big moment for me as a professional of like, do I just kind of ignore it and brush it under the rug and act like that's okay? Or do I stand up for what I feel like is appropriate and acceptable conversation for myself? Maybe not for everybody, but it was in that moment that I appreciated the feedback and his comfort level with sharing that, and just let him know that that was not something I appreciated his feedback on, and very politely used it as an opportunity to educate him and give him the benefit of the doubt that perhaps he wasn't aware how a comment like that could be taken or perceived, not just by a woman, but any sort of commentary on appearance or makeup or whatever it may be. But yeah.
And hopefully you use that as a learning experience and grew from that.
Exactly.
And I wore my feathers just because of that.
I mean, I wore black lipstick the next day just to really, but yeah, not to shy away from who you are. That was like the big takeaway.
It's the confidence.
This is how I show up.
Absolutely. And so next up, Alison, hello. Would you like to introduce?
For Alison.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure, Alison Herzog, and I head global corporate marketing at Visa as well as all small business marketing. And I'm based here in Austin, Texas, but just got back in from New York at 11 o'clock last night.
Oh my goodness.
So, had the other Brand Innovators conference, which was amazing. Oh my gosh, speaker lineup, these guys are really good.
Well, thank you for joining us. You came in right on time because the next question is directed to you. So what we would like to know is, with your experience, I think you've worked in very male-dominant companies. And so how do you think that your male counterparts can provide support and become advocates in the workplace for females?
It's a great question. So I actually relocated here from Salt Lake, and I'd pretty much always been surrounded by men. Actually, the note-taking thing, I don't know how common it is, but I was asked to take notes. Gosh, maybe 13, something like that, 15 years ago, and I looked at them, and I was surrounded by engineers and developers, and I just said, they're not going to be very good notes. I'm not good at note-taking, and I also just didn't understand their language. So I just said, I'm not, they're not going to be what you're looking for. So I just declined, and they never asked me again. But I also did get at, something I noticed, and the problem is that we as women have been indoctrinated to do some of these things. It's really challenging, and so we do get expected to bring the food. We also, and so men, this is why we need help. We're the ones that many times stick around to clean up. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that, but and there's an expectation. But something when I came over here to Austin, Dell Technologies relocated me. Something I really appreciated about the company was they brought in an external company. I worked really closely with Karen Quintos, who was the CMO at the time. And they brought in where it was actually, it was kind of a scary acronym that at first I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? But it was about white males helping women. And I hadn't really thought about it. And there was this whole curriculum, this whole training that we went through, and it was so intelligent. Because the reality is, women, people of color, we don't hold as much power. In fact, up until just barely, women were outnumbered by men named John in C-suite than there were women in C-suite. That is literally just a recent change. So if white men hold the power, and it's not like there's any bad intentions, it's just how it's been, and we need them to help change the dynamic. They know what they know. They don't necessarily understand discrimination is happening. There's prejudice, it's just inherent. But that's why the lipstick conversations are important, because especially generationally, it might have been totally appropriate to say, I don't like your lipstick. I think you look you're like, I'm not judging your choices.
I don't like your chinos, John.
Exactly.
Your t-shirts you own are.
I'll take you to New York and you'll feel underdressed every day. So, but that's the thing is, it's such a challenging conversation because we do have to talk about women in leadership. We never want to diminish the significance and importance of men, though, in the conversation because they're so important. The vast majority are here to help, and we need that help, and that's where you find them as mentors, as sponsors, and you have open, candid conversations. And the majority of the conversations that I've had have been well received and a desire to understand. Maybe the only negative conversation when I've tried to educate was when I was pregnant with my second child and I needed parking in my own building. And I was treated like I was a whiny female. Because ultimately it worked out and the company had a lot of changes. But the reality is they just didn't know what they just didn't know. They didn't know what it was like to be pregnant. They didn't know that there was risk of preterm. It never occurred to them. And same thing happened with Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In. It was the weirdest thing. I'm reading it while pumping, because that's not awkward. And taking breaks, you're like, I am in a meeting, but you're really in some room pumping. And I was reading the book and her first story is when she was at Google and she was pregnant and she said, oh my gosh, I need parking closer to my building. And she thought how many women had come before her and needed parking in the building, closer to the building. And she just didn't know. And that's why the thing with men and white men in particular, they just don't know, but they want to help. And so we have to really make sure we're having those honest conversations because they're the best of intentions. And those who have power are the ones who have the ability to lift up.
That's so true. I was having a conversation with my significant other about this panel, and he's like, there's a pay gap for females? And I'm like, how much time do you have? So, and they just don't know. So I think it is our job to have these honest conversations and educate them, and then put our forces together, combine to be able to take this on together.
Yeah, I feel like the commitment to stay curious and be open by everybody, right? You don't have to know the answers. Nobody has all the answers, but I think just that commitment to asking questions and acknowledging that there is still so much work to do and having that consistent commitment, not just saying we're doing X, Y, Z, but showing up every day in a way that demonstrates that curiosity.
Yeah, if I can just add one thing to that, by no means that those opportunities that one would take to educate are easy, right? It takes bravery, it takes a lot of open-mindedness on both sides, right, to want to go there, and that gets uncomfortable. But I always really love those opportunities because for me it was always, how do we just, tackle it head on and say that it's not okay? And whether, I think it served me well, but a lot of times I'm like, am I going to be sidelined after, bringing that up to my CEO or bringing that up to my C-suite colleague, or my brand manager colleague when I was starting my career. And, but it's necessary because otherwise things will never change. And it's, again, I think it's just important to be building those bridges, and I'm very grateful that when I was able to have more and more of a forum to be able to discuss these things and educate and be in that position with maybe less risks, if I would bring it up, I'm very grateful that I found white men, that gave me more and more those places to be able to lead my voice. And I want to say also, brand Innovators and Mark, what he's doing, I don't know where you are, I didn't say hi yet. When I was the first time CMO and, giving me the platform to do a fireside chat at South by Southwest and talk about those things and have a safe space and go really deep. We need people like that, right? And in other places that I've worked at. But it takes a lot of bravery and fearlessness. By no means that is easy. It's terrifying, but it's necessary.
One thing just to build on this topic is I feel like not only is the opportunity in educating, white men but also younger women. I feel like that's something that I've experienced over the last couple of years, kind of coming into this male-dominated space and seeing our founders kind of experience even discrimination themselves. These women who are at the top of their careers, some of kind of the biggest personalities of women in business, and it really only clicked for me, some of those biases, when they called them out, and I was able to hear that and then look at my experience differently. So I feel that these conversations that we're having are both, beneficial for, men and other communities, but younger women who may just be experiencing these things for the first time.
And younger men.
And younger men.
Or even don't realize. I think when we were doing a prep call, also sometimes people just don't even realize it's happening, and that includes the generations that are just joining the workforce. It's literally like, oh no, it's not happening anymore. And at some point, there's a recognition. I mean, I've heard it multiple times, like, oh no, I don't get discriminated against. And I'll tell you, salary-wise, because you brought it up, almost every single job I've had, I have been underpaid as a female. And the way that I found that out was by having transparent conversations about how much I made, which I actually feel is really important. I love that laws are being passed to show salary ranges. Tip, most of the time, the top that they're publishing is actually not the top. Might be a midpoint, so just know there's probably still some negotiation room. But there was one company I came into and I negotiate, actually two, well, I'll just reference one. One where I worked really hard to negotiate and I just pushed and gave logical reasoning as to why I should, why they needed to go higher. And they were like, oh man, this is the ceiling. So I came in and then was there for a little while and found out a male colleague who had less experience and less education made significantly more than I did. And that's why transparent conversations are important. And that also helps discovery of sometimes I felt, I sort of triumphed with what I got, and then I found out, oh gosh, I did not triumph. But I didn't know it till I had a conversation.
And do you think that we can, how can we proactively address this? Is it just in the workplace with people that you trust, like other men that you trust, or how can we really proactively start the conversation of the pay gap and try to make a change?
I believe accountability is one of the biggest pieces because, I've worked for large companies, I've worked for, some smaller companies. I don't want to hear comms tell me a whole bunch of crap about how we support diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and do evaluations. Most of these companies are doing evaluations in terms of, pay. But what I care about is, are you publicly saying, I'm going to have, here are the numbers. Right now we're at a 48% blah, blah, blah. And by 2025, 2030, we're going to fix it. We know we've got a problem, but I want a public commitment. And I want numbers. I don't want to just hear about it. So I do feel like it's companies coming out and also us asking for that accountability. I also feel the further I get in my career, I have responsibility and accountability to making sure those things happen. I didn't, start out thinking, oh, I want to be CMO. But at this point in life, I'm like, I have responsibility towards changing those conversations and bringing it up because I do have more power than I did when I first started out, and I have to use that power to make a difference. Like my mom, she had to resign when she got married because you weren't allowed to be married and be a flight attendant.
That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, and you were trained on your hair and makeup. She still does her hair and makeup that way.
Hopefully it's bright lipstick is involved.
It's not. It's she when her lipstick brand goes out, she goes and buys all of them and then has to figure it out again. But
I'll get her contact information later. But just to add on to what you're saying, I feel like it's leading by example. And, a point, just even in the title of this panel of women in marketing leadership, I think the word leader sometimes implies an org chart with a lot of people under you, right? And I see the word leader as you never know who you're influencing. I remember looking back in my career, there's women and men in my career that probably they don't know how much they've impacted me or shaped how I show up today and think about them once a month oh, I remember when Kelly did XYZ. So the leadership principle and really having to shift the conversation, I think, starts by example and not waiting until you have a title or a team that reports to you, because leadership happens on the daily, regardless of what your organizational chart or your title or business card says. So I think that there's definitely room to impact no matter where you fall in an organization, for sure.
Also, women, please work on not apologizing constantly or saying just. There's actually some great, Google it, there's some great articles on the fact that we have a tendency to soften our language all the time, and I'm guilty. So now I look at my emails and I think, did I say just? I have a colleague who I love, this is really her, I think I would call it really her first job out of her MBA program, and she says sorry all the time. And I've been coaching her, please don't say sorry, there's zero reason for you to be saying sorry right now. And even I've trained myself to the best of my ability, if I bump somebody, while walking, I don't say sorry, I say excuse me. It's just those small changes that we have to stop softening ourselves and just be ourselves. Exclamation points.
I was gonna ask about that.
Watch how many.
I always use exclamation points, but I'm excited. I really genuinely am. If I'm not smiling, people are like, are you okay?
Pro exclamation point. We talked about this on the pre-call, but as a woman who works with women, I had to feminize my communication. I feel like when I was younger, I was really trying to assert, more of like a masculine tone, and I realized that I was coming off as combative. And so that's even something that I will give feedback to my male counterparts on, as someone who's working with primarily women, like, you should consider using softer language in communication. So I'm not totally sold on no exclamation point.
I'm not saying no exclamation point, I'm saying not 5 exclamation points.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.
And it's like all caps is screaming.
Yeah.
Right? So be mindful in your communications. It's more of, I catch myself, don't do an exclamation point every sentence.
That's
There's
fair.
those Instagram posts, I know I've saved them all,
Yeah.
LinkedIn and posts all of the social media things. That's reframing your language. Instead of sorry, this is late, thank you for your patience. Again, very small tweak, but when I receive communication that says thank you for your patience, I'm like, oh, all right, you're welcome. 100%.
Yeah, we're like, I appreciate you understanding.
Exactly, not apologizing.
Pivoting.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I think just on that front, authenticity is everything. When you try and spend so much time trying to be something or someone that you're not, just because you want to fit a mold, and that also starts with changing your communication style, right? It's such a waste of energy, and it takes away, and I think it's detrimental to one's health. So I've really, growing up, I had no choice but, really valuing my self-worth, in light of lots of, insults and horrible comments and sexist and racist comments, and my religion, whatever it is. I just, for being different, right? And I've always made it a point that one day I was going to be in a place of leadership. I want to be able to give the space and the spotlight, and shine the spotlight on people that did not look like me or didn't sound like me. And I think that is such a great, I feel very grateful that in my career I was able to create those spaces. It's amazing how much magic you make happen when someone who is shy, who is not looked at as high potential because it's in a male-dominated industry and were thought they didn't understand anything to beverages or supplements or bodybuilding or whatever it is, and you give them that form and they show greatness and they come up with an amazing campaign or a great social idea that it becomes 360. There's so much power in that, and it really stems from giving the voice to the voiceless, right? And being truly authentic, because there's no way to be other than being yourself. There is so much power in that.
I love that. The authenticity was a key theme when we were chatting. And I had said the older I get, and maybe also because I have children, I just don't have time for the crap. I'm just so tired. I just cut to what is the point? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think that authenticity is so critical, because I have to get to the point one thing that I, had mentioned is my mantra is directness is kindness. I can't handle passive aggressiveness. I have so much anxiety around it. Like, it genuinely stresses me out. And so, like, I need somebody to be direct so that I just know what's, like, do you like it? Do you not like it? How do I fix it if I don't know? Like, oh my gosh. And with authenticity with my teams, I'm very transparent, and that has taken a lot of time because I came from a family where we did not talk about feelings, we did not hug, there was none of that. And I married a man who is the opposite. So I've grown up over time, but it's having conversations about mental health. Like, I had a manager that was so bad, I went to therapy, and then I started medication. It was that bad. And I talk about that. And we talk about, I'm an introvert, and there's actually a lot of people that are introverts, but a lot of times we get classified as, oh, you must be slow, oh, you don't have energy, you don't like people. That's not what an introvert is. But it's having those very authentic conversations of maybe things that were stigmatized or put into categories where how could you possibly be successful if you have anxiety or depression or any of these things? But the teams actually, we feel safe together now. And so we challenge each other to be bold and to come up with ideas and come up with the worst idea first, because safety is the most important thing, and you can't have that without authenticity.
Absolutely. I feel like we can talk about this for another hour, but I know we're at time, right, Rachel? So 5 minutes? Okay, so are there any questions? One right here.
I have a lot of questions.
Yes?
So, I mentor a lot of folks, and I want to throw a word out, and I love somebody that, the word listen. What does that mean to you? I haven't heard it yet. It means a lot to me, and I'd love to hear what you think about it in your roles.
I'll go first because I mentioned the introvert thing. So an introvert superpower is listening. I had a leader, very, very high up leader, who we run a development call where she had a certain level and above, and she said, I expect you all to speak up on this call. Like, at your level, you should all be able to speak up on the call. And there was a lot, it was like 60 of us. So that was not happening.
Yeah.
But it diminished the fact that an introvert, one of our greatest superpowers is that we listen. And we seek to understand. And no, we don't react in the moment many times because we want the information. I can make all sorts of gut reactions. It doesn't mean they're going to be very good. So I do, listening it's great that you brought that up, because I think it is critical, and we can't be successful if we're operating only on the limited knowledge that we have and we're talking at people. I know all about myself, but I'd rather learn about other people. They're way more interesting.
As an extrovert and an Italian extrovert, listening is not my superpower. I'm always formulating my answer. I'm like, oh, I'll react. Let's do this. I know more. So it's a practice for me to truly clear my brain, not think about my grocery list or what I'm going to say next. It's like really being present and just hearing and hearing you, but listening, taking it in, absorbing. Understanding, taking a breath before responding. I love that you said present, because you can listen but not be present. Right. There's a difference between hearing and listening, which I tell my boyfriend, whose name is John, all the time. Are you hearing me or are you listening? We have 2 more questions back there, and we're here.
This speaks to, yeah, I'm not. I'm Persian, very soft-spoken. So I wanted to kind of ask y'all specifically to what you were saying about, talking through some of the challenges we encounter as a person from a marginalized community. Just historically speaking, a person that is in a place of privilege is not going to go and put themselves in a position that is going to make them uncomfortable. So I feel like a lot of people that are in a place of privilege are not going to go and learn and do this stuff on their own. So how do we, as people from marginalized communities, go and empower leaders and empower allies or empower other folks to do some of the mental load? And it's not entirely on us to be the one to educate others. Just kind of what are y'all experiences with that, and what is y'all's advice to folks that are in that position?
I can take that. I mean, I can just offer a perspective. I mean, it goes a long way. You're absolutely right. And sometimes you feel burdened as a person from marginalized community or person of color to keep always doing the education and being the one who's brave and the one who's bold. But it's also, we have no choice but to do it. I love sharing articles, Instagram posts with my colleagues and bosses. It goes a long way, and just to set up, the conversation for later. Listening, I had to really listen and understand and read the room and understand each person's communication style or favorite communication style. What would they react to? And I would really think about what is the format of communication that I needed to share before setting up that conversation. That went a long way, but it's absolutely necessary. And like I said, I think more and more people in the position of privilege become more aware. I would say after the George Floyd, everyone was more sensitive. And then 2 years later, you barely hear it, or those people forgot how unjust this world is, or the society that we live in. So yeah, I think we should never stop.
So when you encounter injustices with other women leaders in your company, how do you address that? Because I actually find it easier to address men because they are able to take a stance back, and it almost immediately comes off as combative when you try to have that equal conversation with a female leader.
Unfortunately, I've had that experience multiple times. It's a challenge. It really is. There's some women who have gone through so much that we can't fathom. Even my little, I'm not gonna say little, my contribution, the company that I was having my second child at, they had no paid maternity leave. I couldn't get the parking. I told them at 8 weeks pregnant that I needed parking because of my experience with my first child. They knew before my mother. These challenges that we've gone through, and as a result, that company now has paid maternity and paternity leave. They have parking. They have all these different changes. But so you have those contributions. Some of the female leaders, in that place, some of them felt like, well, I've gone through this. Why you should go through it too? Or there's limited spaces at the top. And I don't think they always realize they think that. They just know what they had to do to climb, and they know they had to assimilate to be like a man. Yeah. And so it's really hard. I actually had a manager who, I talked to her. She actually was like, oh, we're going to give you this promotion. I want to put you in this role. And so I got oh, wow, that's so, thank you. And I had the pay transparency conversation with her because as a female, having been underpaid most of my career, I thought she was an ally. And she knew how much I made, but I just said, here's my salary. What do you think we can get me to? I would love your help. And then I talked to a few other male colleagues actually about how they'd gotten the promotion. How did you make it happen? What were the things you needed to do to close the deal? And I kid you not, it went into my annual review that I should not talk to people about wanting to get promoted. There were several things in my annual review about not having those conversations because they made her uncomfortable because it was not the way she operated. And I hate to say it, but sometimes you have to maneuver around those people and recognize who your sponsors and your mentors are. And sometimes it's finding the people that are more powerful than them and recognizing you can't change them. Because I thought this is my ally, but not all women are allies. And that's why I still think we have to be authentic to ourselves. We have to have those conversations. We have to normalize those conversations. But I've definitely experienced it. I don't know if any of you have recommendations on how to handle.
I think what everybody's saying is it's so real, and I agree. Sometimes it can be harder to have those conversations with a woman, but I think it ultimately comes from the fear of having such limited spaces available for women at the top. So it's this vicious cycle, right? Where if there's continuing to be limited space at the top, then that behavior will continue to exist. So I think it is leading by example, knowing that will always be there, whether it's, whether you're 12 years old on the playground or 45 years old in a boardroom. And I think just committing to leading by that example and hopefully enacting change.
And let's just recognize it. It's crushing when that happens. Whether it's a person of color that I thought, would understand what I went through and would be a sponsor at big companies that I've worked at in the first 10 years of my career, or it's a woman who's in a position of leadership that understands or would defend me if I was going through the ringer on a Monday performance meeting, because I don't know why, but they always happen on a Monday. But it's recognizing it. It's, for me, I realized it's also being empathetic and understand they've had it really hard. But you try what you can to educate them and get them to see your side. But like you said, Alison, if they don't, you gotta maneuver, but up front. I mean, I'm a direct person, and it's important to show it the way it is, but also be prepared that there's consequences. You may need to leave that place because it's not the place that's gonna value you to be your authentic self or get you to the title or position you deserve or you think you rightfully have worked for. And that's okay, because when you work hard and you're accomplished, you have nothing to fear. There's no need to be something that you're not. What's important, I think, to me now as a woman is my health, it's my wellness, it's my family. That means, because I've seen way too many women pay a very high price, suppressing their feelings, playing the game of men, or even marginalized population, playing the game of, the majority, just to get there, and when they get there, it's not sweet. They've lost a lot because they're not able to look at themselves in the mirror and be proud of who they see because they've not stayed true to that child, right? And that for me is too high of a price to pay.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. I feel like we need more time. Obviously, this is an extremely passionate and important topic, and so I hope that all of you go back to your respective lives with a little bit more insight and continue advocating for leaders, not only females but males, so we can work together. I think now there's a break, right? But before we break, please give all of these amazing ladies a round of applause.